Hello everyone, I'm Smith, the Smith & Black channel here at Ticker Talker with the new macro vid. Wishing everybody a happy new year. And we got some interesting stuff here. SPY, big outside year. Momo Hammer, outside 3, going out right on the highs. And so the question is, if we get out of this, do we stay out? Because an outside bar, that could happen again. And obviously with pandemics and all the things that we don't know going on, that's something we want to know about. But you can see this monster range after last year's real blaster and then took it out. So here's your broadening formation, taking these out and taking that out. But you're going out on the high. So whenever you have an outside bar, you want to stay outside. So if we start going to new highs, we want to stay up there. So we'll see how that goes. But you can see we've only had, this was an outside year here that just ticked down a little bit. But this is very rare. It almost never happens. So it is what it is, and we're going out on the highs. If we go to the quarterly, here, you can see we had the outside, inside quarter, 312, and still going and going out on the highs. So anytime we go out on the highs, everything's going to look good. Everybody's going to say, oh, buy out a pullback because it looks good. So the thing is, how are you going to make this look bad? How are you going to reverse any of this? You're nowhere near doing that. So, so far for the markets, that's good. QQQ, quarterly, just blasting up, was too strong here. That outside quarter, 3-2 to the upside, going out on the highs. If we go to the year, you can recall that the Qs were too strong to go outside. They came down but couldn't take out last year's lows, and then boom, right here when continuity changed to upside, everything exploded. Now it's out on the highs. So is what it is. There you go. If we go to the small cappers, look at this. Look at this. Huge outside year. Quarterly, the outside, inside 3, 1, 2, 2, and then that real big blast here after triangulate out and into the high. So nowhere near a reversal there either. If we go to TLT bonds, TLT bonds, you can see this 3/4 inside of here. Right? So how are you going to get outside of this range is what we want to know about. It's an inside month this month, so we'll see, but nowhere near taking out the mother bar. So we can expect to get chopped up in the bond market. If you go to the year, you'll see this. How are you not going to be an inside year? Right? How are you going to take that or that out? You're nowhere near doing that. So bond market might be a chop shop. Obviously, it's very early. We haven't even opened, but we'll see how that goes. But that's something you'd want to know about if you're trading that. The Dow Jones Diamonds. Yeesh, Momo Hammer, big outside year. If we go to the quarter, the outside, inside 3, 1, 2, 2, and into the highs. So just like I said, it's a lot of exhaustion risk by hanging around the highs, but we'll see how that goes. If we go to the trannies, quarterly, the outside, inside 3, 1, 2, we knew about that, going into the highs, and that's going to give you this on the year. Same deal. Same deal. And so one of the reasons everything's going to look very similar is like when you have the kind of sell-off we had earlier this year and then the recovery, things will all tend to look like the futures, especially on a macro basis, because the futures take over when there's high volatility, where natural buyers and sellers will just stand back and let it happen. So as you'll see as we go on here, there's been some things that have changed. So different, like I said, Boeing, something like this. How are you not going to be an inside year on here? So most of the pandemics, how are you going to take this out or that out when you're here? You're nowhere near doing that. Stuff like airlines. How are you going to do that? And so you'd more likely, if they're going to do that, would be go bankrupt. They're done, right? But for the most part, they could spend years, if not decades, in this range. That's a problem, right? It's a problem for them, not for us, because we know not to go there. But doesn't mean you can't trade it because this is a macro chart. What it means is most likely you only get out instead of doing the long-term hold, right? So we'll see how that goes. If we go to the utilities, big outside year and nowhere near taking it out. But if we go to the quarterly, here you can see the quarterly is outside, inside, and then pokes up. So the thing is, if we're going to stay in this mother bar, we want to see if we can take this out, right? or are we going to take that out? So it's still trying to drive higher, but 3/4 inside of that range there. If we go to the REITs, VNQ, you can see the same thing, 3/4 inside of here. And if you go to the yearly, big outside year, like some of these, how are you going to get out of here, right? This is something you really want to be aware of. And so most people, when they think of a macro chart or something, they'll just put out a daily chart and put more bars on it. No, it's like you want to start at the yearly, quarterly, down to the monthly, and see, are you going to be able to break any of this stuff, right? So you're nowhere near doing that. If we go to the financials, FAS, year, look at this, big, huge outside year. How are you going to take this out, right? How are you going to take out the highs or the lows? You ain't. And if we go to the quarterly, once again, the big outside. So the good part for this, for these guys, was the inside, and then boom, to the upside on the quarterly. That's good. But now you got a new quarter and a new year coming, and it puts you smack dab in the middle of the range, right? So that's something you want to be aware about. XLF. Similar, but a little better. It's a little bit closer to taking this out. All right, you got your inside quarter to the upside. That was nice, and it was grindy. The thing is, for people that are longer-term investors or swingers or whatever you want to call them, is that we knew about this, right? Because we talk about this stuff in the macro video once a month, right? And there you go, inside quarter, and boom, off you go. If we go to KRE, we'll go to the small banks. Here you go. Look at that, inside quarter, albeit to the upside. If you go to the year, yeesh. All right, a little closer to taking out the upside, all right, on the yearly. And you can see this was an inside year. This would be a RevStrat year if we can take this out to the upside, all right? Here's 3, 1, 2. 2, RevStrat. So you think it can't happen? Well, we're going to find out. Well, so that's going to be above here. If you can get above 58.47, you got some distance on that, but we'll see if we can do that. If we go to energy, XLE, the inside year and down, puke, nowhere near taking out either side of this year's range. Certainly handily would be quite a move to even go to RevStrat this thing. If we go to the quarterly, here, 3/4 inside of here. So this is, once you go inside like this, if you can't get out of here, so that's a mother bar. These three, either side of these lows or this high gets my attention, but you're nowhere near doing that. It was a 1-bar RevStrat on the quarter, but still stuck in the major range. We go to OIH. See, very similar, stuck in here, 3/4 in here, and that yearly. Here, still nowhere near taking out last year's highs, so I'm going to be aware of that. If we go to XRT retail, that goes blasting into the highs. Look at this. Look at this range for years. Going sideways, and then boom, boom, takes it out, going towards the highs. So just some exhaustion risk here. And for the most part, it's fragmented where XRT, that's you're looking at case by case basis of the stores, but this is very nice. Here you go, the down, the inside, boom, right here. 2 nice quarters to the upside for XRT, but just stuck into the highs. If we go to IBB, the IBB, just exhaustion risk going toward the highs. You're closer to taking out the highs, right, after all of this. And if you look at the yearly, you're going to see this in IBB. Here. Not quite. I don't think this is inside, right? 2374. No, not quite. But you can see this outside, closer to the highs, just exhaustion risk. We'll see how that goes. If we go to gold, and gold takes out these highs on the year. Closer to taking out the highs of the year. That was nice, right? After coming down through this. If you go to the quarterly, you're going to see this. Quarterly, inside, Momo hammer. So now you're closer to taking that out. If they're going to get it in gold, I'm like, Bitcoin. It's like, maybe gold. We'll see. All right, so if we go to XLK, as you can tell, quarterly just going up, 2 up. Yearly going to be like so, just blasting near the highs, closer to being a 2 to the upside. SMH, the same. So a lot of things when you go out on the highs, yeah, we can just expect all these things to, just be hovering there closer to 2s to the upside. So what we want to be aware of is new continuity levels and saying, okay, Rob, they're on the highs. And I'm like, yeah, it's a long way for a lot of these to give us any negative signals. Doesn't mean that we can't go down. It's just that we're not going to have the signals to do it, the major signals to do it. But we can have continuity dropping, right? And that would set up inside quarters or go up and set up outside quarters or outside years back to the downside. But we have to let them open, and they would have to prove that to us. Until then, we're on the highs and just don't have any additional signals. Okay, so with the massive amount of outside years, there's not going to be a lot of inside years, unfortunately. And, we've seen a lot of good ones come from that. But let's get to it. You've got PCG here as an inside year. So to break that, you'd have to break 625 or 1834. You've got ENDP here, down in here, and that's closer because it's right on the highs. Inside year, low is 208, high 731, so you're close to taking that out. To the upside, if you go to beyond the meat, how are you not going to be an inside year here? How are you going to take this out? You're probably not going to do that, so we'll see how that goes. You go to RAD. RAD down in here and stuck. Inside year, and that'd be a high of 2245 or a low of 885 to take that out. AUPH. And nowhere near taking this out. All right, it's a big inside year there. CVS, a little bit closer. You're stuck in here at CVS. If you go inside year, up or down over 76.44 or 52.04. ITCI. Here, a little bit closer, that would be 312 if you can take this out to the upside. 34.31. TWOU here, inside year, and you'd have to take out 49.46 to go inside year and up on that. IRWD here, and you can see this, higher high, lower low, then inside. This, nowhere near taking it out, but you need to take 1406. Hershey's Chocolate, inside the Momo Hammer. On the year, over 161.83 would take that out. QURE here, yikes. And closer to taking this to the downside, below 34.38. Okay, here's where things get a little more interesting. The inside quarters, all right? And so this will tell the tale of the beginning of the year here. We got Microsoft inside on the quarter, right? Above 228.12 or below 199.62. You've got Workhorse inside of the quarter, nowhere near taking it out. If you go to Facebook inside on the quarter, you take that out, would be above 297.38 or below 254.82. Go to CRM, Salesforce, closer to taking the downside, inside quarter, above 270.92 or below 215.63. Netflix, right dab in the middle. So like a lot of this stuff is like in the middle of a lot of things here. So don't be surprised to stall out, but we'll see. Netflix quarterly, you'd have to take out 572.49 or 463.41. Mondelez, inside Momo Hammer. So we're looking to take out 59.12 for the Momo Hammer to kick in there. You can also see these 3 quarters inside of here. Overstock, huge inside quarter and right near the lows, below 47.61. Nvidia, above 587.66 or below 492. EQT here, shooters below 1227 or above 1687. NVAX. Doge, right in the middle of it. Which have to take out 76.59 or 150.50. Amazon. Above 3,496.24, below 29.50.12. Home Depot. Above 292.65 or below 258.73. DocuSign. Right dead in the middle. Below 185.36 or below 256. Big Lots. Closer to shooter quarter inside. Below 42.66. Church and Dwight CHD. Below 82.52 or above 96.31. That reminds me we missed the XLP. XLP on the quarter just slightly a 2 to the upside. After this, the 3, 1, 2, 2. If we go to Adobe, inside quarter Momo Hammer, above 519.60. If we go to LMT, Lockheed Martin, triple inside quarters, right after the outside. That's going to be above 395.46 or below 345.65. W, inside quarter, breaks below 221.09. Borg Warner, 3 quarters inside, nowhere near taking either side out, but you need 42.24 or 34.30. Masco, MAS, inside quarter, 60.05, 51.53. ITCI, 3, here you go, the inside gear. We already know about that, but the quarterly would be 32.55 or 22.91. DGX, above 130.84, below 109.50. Campbell Soup, 3 quarters inside. First quarter, take out 50.77 or below 45.51. Lulu, above 387.37 or below 307.81. BMRN, 3-1 on the quarter. To bring it back up, you need 92.57. Becton Dickinson, BDX, 3 quarters inside of this. You're going to need either 253.23 or below 226.15. ILMN, closer to taking out the upside, and that's going to be above 378.33. Yearly hammers, and this is going to be massive because of the outside gears that we had going towards the upside. So we're going to let a lot of these things break. I'm not going to waste a lot of time going through this because we're going to update this once a month. You got GE as a yearly hammer if we can get above 13.26. Bank of America, you're going to see a lot of that stuff. Still nowhere near taking it out. So like I said, we're going to let these things take it out. Western Digital, the 1-3. You've got Bristol Myers here trying to hammer. You can see all of this stuff here on a yearly basis. Look at this. This is years inside of just doing nothing in here, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time here. JP Morgan, like I said, it's going to look like a lot of the FAS and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time on that. We'll let them break, and then next month, try and update and see what happens. On the quarter, you got 3 quarters inside, but Baxter would be RevStrat to the upside above 82.88. Mondelez inside, we already went to that. Johnny John here, 1 bar Rev Strat, and then Momo Hammer. Quarter above 157.66. Gonna run. Momo Hammer, but you're nowhere near taking that out. MA. Quarterly. Takes out the lows. Potential hammer because it takes out the low. So the difference between a Momo Hammer and a hammer is a 2 down. Momo Hammer is either inside or a 2 up. All right, we'll be very clear about that. But here above 359.41, if you go to EA, hammer counter shooter above 143.86. Union Pack, Momo Hammer. It's also an inside month above 211.14. SWCH quarterly hammer over 1665. Rev Strat quarters to the downside, potential three quarter pattern here in H&R block. That would kick in below 1491. Oprah, 3 quarters inside, but would be Rev Strat here below 1872. Duke Power, like the Utes, 3 quarters inside, but that would go Rev Strat to the downside below 87.60. So a lot of the utilities would be looking like this. Rev Strat to the downside, 3 quarter inside pattern down here below 94.70. On the year, 1 bar Rev Strat year for GILD and potential Momo shooter if they want to keep crushing this thing below 56.56. Quarterly shooter NVTA below 38.38. ARCT outside 3 shooter below 32.88. Centene CNC shooter below 57.56. AEP, more Ute, 3 quarter inside pattern, shooter, below 80.41. Dollar General, shooter quarter down, below 205.26. ES, Rev Strat quarter shooter down below 82.17. Goose, shooter quarter down below 29.09. VRTX, shooter on the year would have to take out 197.47. So we're going to leave it at that. Everything's got a break. You know, a lot of things closer to taking out to the upside. Then would have to stay there. So we'll leave it at that and let them break. Oh, that's going to do it. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Rob Smith, the Smith & Black channel here. Ticker Tiger with the macro vid. Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Smith, the Smith & Black channel here. Ticker Tiger.
He goes pretty quick. You guys get all that?
With the new macro vid.
Get this off my screen. All right. Give me just a second to get the charts back up here. Are those his list or from his scanners? You know, I'm not quite sure how he decides what to go through on the macros. I mean, I've watched pretty much all of them and it's different every time. So he's really, I think, just trying to give us a broad overview of different sectors. But can you guys see my charts now? Are we all good there? You can hear me okay? Yes, yes. Okay, cool. I don't know. I've always been kind of curious, and I probably should have just asked him how he chooses what to go through. But my biggest takeaway is we have so many outside years that we're going to need a lot more information going into the new year in terms of really having a great plan. I mean, that'll be true anytime you're changing continuity, right? Just get this in order. So I just made kind of an initial list, and I will try to keep an eye on some of the things that he had there in that bid. But let's just run through what I have, then hopefully we'll have some time to go through questions and try to wrap this up about 5:15. So looking into tomorrow, a couple things coming up in the next week. We've got this whole debate with the electorates and different members of Congress trying to deny, we still have Trump basically trying to fight to stay president. I don't think that's going to happen, but it may create some chaos in the markets this next week with some of the ancillary things that are going on. So just be ready for that. I think a lot of this is happening on Tuesday. Going into the week, looking at Apple here, I do like this for a potential long. We've got 3 down days. We'll have to see where she opens up. I mean, obviously we'll know a lot more in the morning when we can see what the pre-market looks like, but it looks like it could be, especially with this pattern, when you have a 2-2 down, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get that 2 up, even if the ultimate trend continues down. So Apple, clearly we've got strength to the upside. I like that so far for a potential long tomorrow. The only thing that's somewhat interesting here is if we look at the weekly, we do have that shooter down. But once you get used to seeing that pattern, yes, sometimes it can go just like we have here and reverse back to the downside. Other times you'll get that shooter counters hammer. So assuming tomorrow we don't start changing direction to the downside, I would think we'd get a hammer candle up on the weekly. We'll have to wait and see how she opens. Next, looking at AMD. This is a little onerous potentially. We've gone into just shy of 100. I mean, usually when you see a stock like this so close to 100, it's going to push and make it. It didn't quite get there and it's failed. So that's a potential sign of weakness. We'll have to see how she opens up tomorrow, but below 89-ish, we could be looking for that 2-2 back down with a magnitude on this 3 candle down to 74. Not saying that AMD would get there in a month, but something to keep an eye on. The thing to be aware of, we are heading back into earnings season. So towards the end of January, we're going to start to see a lot of things start to move and change because of that. It's just hard to tell. And I will go back over questions too. I see your question about something Rob didn't cover. Let me just run through these quick and then we'll certainly get to questions. Obviously for tomorrow, if you're looking to trade AMD, you'd want to trade on the break of this inside candle. So 92.36 to the upside, 90.88 to the downside. And we'll see where she wants to go. On the weekly, we've got this little hammer candle back up. So we have some conflicting information. Tomorrow, again, safest trade is on the break of that inside candle. Amazon, like he mentioned, we have quite a bit of inside action. Some people won't touch this. For me, on these bigger time frames, Amazon's still got a lot of room to move. I believe their earnings is also the end of the month here. Let me see if I can tell you. And a lot of times with these stocks, you see that run up into earnings. Their earnings is February 4th. So we could see a push back to these all-time highs. Weekly, I think we're inside. A lot of these stocks have kind of long-term mother bar issues. So you can see, for instance, with Amazon, we have this huge mother bar candle. back from November. And then you have pretty much all these weeks inside that. It does look like we are slowly trying to move back to the upside, however. And I do like, once again, this type of pattern. This is a 1-2 down, but again, 9 times out of 10, we're going to see a bounce that following day. We've got Costco. Costco, I kind of liked on the monthly. If we look at the monthly, we've got this hammer. And then depending where we open, we're more towards the bottom of the range, but big, strong, engulfing white candle. Little hammer trying to make its way back up. So I do like Costco over that 376 on the month. Costco's got earnings. The earnings come up. Not till March. So it has some room to run back up into earnings. I would think with a lot of these retail stocks too, I haven't heard any preliminary numbers yet. That's going to affect obviously what goes on, but I would imagine they had a pretty good season based on the year that we see. And I do also like the weekly. We had this hammer candle a couple of weeks ago. We took out this magnitude, so I'd be looking for it to do another 2 up, back to the upside. D-Dog. This one could go either way. I liked it on the daily that we've got this hammer candle up. And again, this type of pattern, the 2-2, 2 down, 2 up, I'd be looking for that 2-2 reversal back to the upside, even if ultimately it continues down. We've got some conflicting information if we look at the monthly and the weekly. On the monthly, when you see this kind of pattern, got a candle up, so it's a 2 up, and then we've got your basic doji. This is kind of like a spinning top doji, although that body isn't very big. To me, that just means it consolidated. You see it's a little below the previous month's close, but really it did nothing for the past month. So what that means is we could easily above, let me show you the body of this candle. Above 98.70, I'd be looking for it to go back and target 103 and then maybe up to 111, all the way back up. D-Dog, their earnings is beginning of February. So there is some time for that to make a move back to the upside. Discover, this was in Rob's other video, the weekly video. If you guys haven't watched his weekly video, I believe he posts all that stuff for free to YouTube. So you might want to go back and watch that. It's about 10 minutes and there's some more specifics that he goes through. Discover was one of the stocks that he had. When I'm looking at the yearly setup, what I like is that we're so close to taking out the previous year's highs. So we have some room to the upside. And we're so close, I would think that it would target that 93.63 roughly and possibly 100. Discover, they report the 20th of January. So once again, with a lot of these, you'll often see that push into earnings. I would expect to see that here with Discover. Let me get, that. DraftKings, this guy could go either way. A little bit of conflicting information. What it looks like to me when you get, just make this bigger, when you get a down candle, a small, in my case, white candle, if you're using green and red candle, and then, I'm sorry, red, green, red, if you're using that schematic on your charts. Whenever you see a down candle, a small up candle, and a down candle, typically there's continuation to the downside, and the reverse is also true. So if we've got a green candle, a small red candle, and then a green candle on the other side, you'll typically see that it'll continue up. So looking at this, I would expect some downside. I like it potentially on the quarter. I mean, granted, we've got some room to go here, but we open up here and start taking out these lows, there's room for it to continue back down. On the monthly, we've also got some room here all the way back down to 35. Again, not saying we're going to go there, but it's a possibility. We'll have to see. The weekly, so a little bit of a mixed bag. Let's see how she opens tomorrow. Tomorrow, it does look to me like it's probably going to want lower, but we'll have to wait and see. FSLR, I believe this was also in his weekend vid. Right now, we're inside day and inside week. So I would be looking to trade the break on the week. May or may not happen this week, but something to keep an eye on going forward. To the downside, we're at 95.13. To the upside, we're at 109. And then on the monthly, we've got somewhat of a hammer shooter type pattern that looks fairly decent for a continuation. We'll have to see back to the upside. I like this when we look at the yearly chart. There's so many of these charts that have such big outside years, and it doesn't look like there's a ton of room for them to start moving back up. And we're at all-time highs. I mean, granted, they can keep running, but as Rob always says, you've got exhaustion risk. So this was one of the few charts, if I'm looking at the yearly, we've got quite a bit of magnitude to start moving back through the upside on this. So I definitely am going to be keeping an eye on that. Let's see here. I believe this was also in his weekend vid. And let's see, look here on the 12-month. So what I was looking at here, we don't necessarily have enough information for tomorrow as far as a day trade, but again, if we're looking for some of those bigger long-term watches, we've got this almost a shooter candle. We closed toward the bottom of that range on the quarterly. So below 381.85, we definitely have magnitude back to the downside. So that's what I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And I have a mix in here, guys, of some trades I'm looking at for tomorrow potentially. So Apple, Amazon, that have that 2-day pullback. I'm looking for an upside. Some of the others are things I'm keeping an eye on for bigger moves throughout the course of the year. With JD, we have this up candle with a small red candle. I would suspect that we'll have a decent update tomorrow. If we're looking at some of the other charts here, we've got some strong movement to the upside. We are inside on the month here, inside of the previous month, but we're not too far. I mean, it looks like it does want to go back up here and test. And again, when candles get into, we're at the highs here, we're at 89, 83-ish. When I see that happen, generally these stocks want to make that push up to 100. JD's earnings are not until March, so it's got plenty of time to try to make that run back to the upside. This is a stock that tends to move when we've got positive news on the whole China deal, so we'll have to see how it goes there. But for tomorrow, I am looking for potential upside on JD. JKS, got this big outside month. The only thing that's tough about this, if you draw the broadening formation here on the monthly, I would draw it like this. We are right in the middle of the range, so that might be a little bit tougher. We look at the daily. looking at this chart, it looks like it wants down. However, when you've got, what is it, 6 days in a row down, I don't know that I'm going to be looking to play that out of the gate. I want to see how it shapes up. And if we continue down, I would expect more of a pivot machine gun back down. And looking at the quarterly, again, assuming we open somewhere around here, we do have magnitude to the upside, but depending on what she wants to do, this could be a huge shooter down below 40 with some magnitude back to the downside. So longer term setup, I'm just going to be watching that quarterly to see what she wants to do. KKS. That reports in March, so we have quite a bit of time to see which direction she wants to go. I mean, either way, if she starts to head back up, you've got pivot machine gun to the upside. If she continues down, you've got all of this that you could be taking out. JMIA. On the weekly, we've got shooter counters hammer type of position. She reports, let me tell you here. Not until April. So we've got a lot of time to see what they want to do. The monthly, quarterly, obviously 12-month charts all look very strong. When I'm looking at this, I'm seeing we've got an up candle, a relatively equal size down candle, but it's still holding this level of roughly 39.95.40. So I like that for a potential pop to take you back up and pivot machine gun these guys out. And based on the weekly, I like that as well. That shooter counters hammer. And the weekly setup would really be over that 4406. What does that correspond here? Which is this over the wick of this candle here. Back to the upside. Triple M. Looking at the 12-month, the reason I threw this up, again, trying to find some setups on the longer term that look like they have room to go. And we have this nice hammer candle. And then we have room back to the upside. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on. I like this for a longer term trade over 182.26. Triple M. That report's ended January. So again, given the fact that stocks often like to make these runs into earnings, and we've got an inside month, but we're closer to taking out the upside. Yeah, we've taken out the close. The wick here is at 178 roughly. So I'd be looking for that to continue back to the upside.
Dad's drinking again.
Okay, out. And I do like this chart pattern too for a continuation. Another 2 up. Magnitude of 175.64. Microsoft, this has a similar setup to Apple and Amazon. We've got this nice hammer candle on the daily. This is something I'll probably be watching tomorrow. And I'm looking for a choo-choo back to the upside, additional magnitude, about 225.50. On the quarterly, we've got the shooter counters hammer pattern. It's closer to taking out the upside. I like that. Monthly, we're still inside. But the monthly, we're a little bit mid-range. So just be aware of that. But looking at the weekly, last week's candle to me looks like just a pause. I mean, it closed almost exactly on the previous week's close, so it didn't do much. To me, it's just thinking. And often you'll see that you'll get a candle that looks like that with the body right in the middle before you get a continuation higher. I believe Microsoft reports not too far from now. Yeah, beginning of February. So once again, Microsoft is one that often likes to run up into earnings. Nike's had 1, 2, 3, 4, a down trending pattern for several days here. And now we're getting a nice hammer back up. Nike reports, I think they just reported. Yeah, so they don't report again until the 23rd. Looking at these charts, the weekly, we got a shooter counters hammer type pattern. I would think that we'd get some movement back to the upside based on this. I guess we'll have to see where she opens on the week tomorrow. Yearly, quarterly, so forth looks strong. The only thing that's a little wonky is, well, I guess it's not too bad. Monthly candle. We did make somewhat of a push down toward the end of the month, but it's not like we took out the previous close or anything. So I do like that on the daily for a potential jump up tomorrow. Overstock, he mentioned this in the vid. That's kind of an ugly chart with that big shooter down. Got this inside quarter opens below here. We've got quite a bit of magnitude back to the downside. This thing's looking like it wants to keep going down. And if you scroll in, we've got a lot of room here to pivot machine gun. And right here, these past two candles, it didn't do anything. It just consolidated, went over and came down. That looks to me like it wants some continued downside, looking at that chart. Procter & Gamble, I think that was on either his weekend vid. And Procter & Gamble reports the end of this month. So we already got our little 2-2 to reversal, well, 2-3, right? Because it started out and came back up. That's a pretty strong candle. We've got more magnitude here, up to 140. Procter & Gamble is not a huge mover, a couple points a day, but knowing that we're reporting on the 20th, I could see that we'd get a little run up to, I don't know, potentially 142 area. And then looking at the yearly, we got this nice up candle with just almost a shooter here. Looks like continuation to the upside. The only thing that could present concern, depending on what happens, is this can either be a continuation pattern because we closed right on the previous quarter's highs. There really hasn't done a lot. Where it becomes a concern, obviously, is if we open below this area, so 138.71, and we start to move down. Right now, it looks like just a thinking candle with continued room to the upside. On all time frames, the weekly I like. That's part of the reason I put it on here, because you can see pretty clearly this inside candle, we're up over that. So assuming we open near that 139, where it closed 139.31 and continue up, I do like that on the weekly chart. Snow, this thing just looks like it wants to roll over and die. It's an ugly monthly candle. I would expect that we continue back down, especially with these IPOs. You see that so many times where they get run up for no particular reason, and then they turn around and slam them back down. So I'll be looking at that tomorrow for potential continuation down. The only thing you got to be careful with is, obviously, we've had so many down days in a row. These two almost don't count. It just went sideways, but I do like that for more downside. Tesla, She still looks like she wants to go. I mean, obviously you've got exhaustion risk because you just keep zooming up here, but one of the stronger charts that I've seen. And this candle is almost doji-like, and then you've got wicks on either side. And the close, well, I guess it was a decent amount up. We'll have to see where she opens tomorrow on the daily. That'll give us a lot of hints about, you know, whether she's opening strong and wants to continue up. It seems to me when Tesla gets over 700, she likes to push it up to 900, 1,000, but we'll take a look at where that opens tomorrow. When I liked that for a potential day trade simply because you've got this nice hammer candle on the daily. Looking at, let's see, the quarterly, just make that bigger. It's one of the few to me that looks like it's got some room to continue to move back up and take things out. Of course, Wynn is also a China stock in a lot of ways. That's why you had the run up with Biden getting in. Everyone's hopeful that we're just going to throw all these sanctions and everything out with China and we return to business as usual. So keep an eye on that, but it does have quite a bit of room back here up on the quarter. And I do like that setup tomorrow on the daily. US Steel used to be somebody. I like the yearly. Potentially, we've got lots and lots of room to move back up. Tomorrow, we've got this inside candle. So I wouldn't trade this necessarily until we break to the upside of 1706 and to the downside of 1650. X reports the beginning of February. Once again, with earnings coming up, we could see that it pushes up, and we've also got, you know, a hammer candle back to the upside. Even though it closed down, that's still a 2 up. So I like that weekly setup for a run back to the upside. And that's my list. Questions, let's see here. I have one ticker that Rob did not cover. I think it is a good potential. Yeah, Triple M. I think I had that on there, right? I did go over that, I think. Yeah, I like Triple M myself. I do. I mean, it's one of the few, again, when you're looking at a lot of these charts, we have such big outside years and we run up so high and there's still a lot of questions. Granted, our economy has recovered pretty well, but there's a lot of ancillary stuff going on in the background with small business owners that aren't doing well. A lot of that isn't being reported on. So we're going to have to see how that affects everything going into the new year. But yes, I do like Triple M. We'll have to see where she is. Obviously, that's inside months, so we'd like to see it get outside that level. Zoom and Baba. I did look at Baba. Let me get it back. All these time frames. And Baba, you know, it could go either way, right? If we look at the yearly, the thing that's a little bit tough is this candle closed right in the middle of the range. We all know, though, that Baba can really move when she wants to. And if we're still in this friendly China environment, that bodes well. Also on the quarterly, we've got this nice strong 2 up. We have a 3 down. So the question becomes, can it turn around and 2 back up, or is that a sign that we're moving closer to the downside? The daily to me looks like tomorrow would be a pop because that 2-2 down, typically it's followed by a 2 up the next day. That's a pretty strong pattern. And on the monthly, we've also got a pattern similar to the daily. So we've got a 2-2 down. You'll often see that you get a little bit of a pop with that type of pattern. what's really interesting is we are inside on the week. So you might get quite a bit of chop until you break that range. So just be careful with that. 215 on the downside and 243 on the upside. That's a pretty big weekly candle. We'll have more information based on what the next couple days look like and whether this guy, again, on hopeful China news and maybe China backing off on their investigation. I haven't heard the latest on that whole thing that's driven it down. Let's see, Baba, what was the other one that you guys, Zoom, when I looked at that earlier today, it looks like it still wants down. There's nothing particularly bullish in this chart. Zoom's a mover though, that could easily change. When did they report? They have some time. Yeah, not till the beginning of March. The thing is, when you look at the daily, we're right in the middle of this, on the monthly too. Let's look, we'll start with the monthly and then I'll go back to the daily. We're right in the middle of this gap, right? So markets don't like gaps in any capacity, whether you're using volume profile, whether you're looking at the daily chart, monthly. I would think that Zoom comes down and fills that gap, and that's down to another 10 points or so, 327.05 on the monthly. And then maybe if it taps there, it turns around, goes back up and goes outside. That's a possibility for sure. I mean, Zoom's not going away. The pandemic is not going away. Vaccinations are rolling out more slowly than they would like, all of that kind of thing. So if you look at the daily, you'll see that gap again right here. So I would expect that it's going to come down and fill that gap before it makes a decision on which direction it wants to go. So it could easily do that and then turn around the monthly and go 3. So that's something to watch for. Should I cross off any of these? I'm just trading options or all of these. So most of these, yeah, are potentially good for options. I trade options, so I try to put up stocks that folks can trade with options. But yeah, don't cross any off. Most of them have pretty good options. Would you call the list tomorrow possible trades or play? So what I tried to do is mix in some that I thought were charts we need to keep an eye on based on what I'm seeing on the 12-month, because after going through the weekend video and his year-end vid, there's just so many with these huge outside candles. And it's like, how are we going to get outside that range? And are we really going to continue to keep zooming up? We might, I don't know. The market will tell us what she wants to do. For plays tomorrow, I will have that more narrowed down in the morning. This particular list is a little bit of a mix, just to show you some of the things I picked out that look good for room on the year, some of the month, some of the week. Don't worry if you're not catching it all, because we'll be reviewing this every single morning at 8:45. I'm going to be keeping an eye on this. So if you're completely overwhelmed, don't even worry about it. Just listen, and we'll be hitting this every single morning and going through it. Plays for the week, though, that I do like are Apple potentially, because you've got that 2-2 down. That pattern alone, 2-2 down, you almost always get a 2 back up. Whether that continues back up, I don't really care. But for a daily trade, Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft look pretty good. I will review all of that in the morning, though. ITCI. We'll go till about 5:30 and we'll quit because I'm sure everybody is getting tired of looking at this, but ITCI. Okay, that's interesting. So if we look at ITCI, we've got this nice shooter candle. We're closer to taking out the top side of the range right now on the yearly. So that's interesting. And you got quite a bit of room. The stock used to be somebody back to the upside over the course of the year. So I like that. For tomorrow, As far as a trade on this goes, I do like this as well. When you get this nice, strong bullish candle with a smaller, and this, yeah, this is a slight two. That wick is just slightly higher there. It's almost inside, but not quite. I do like that for a continuation up tomorrow. We are inside on the quarter, but we're close to taking that quarter out. We're real close. So we closed at 31.50. The wick of that candle is 34. ITCI. Let's take a look at the range. Is not huge on the stock. It's about $1.30. So looking at tomorrow, that candle, I mean, clearly it has days where it can move more than that, but this candle, it may take it a couple days to get outside this candle if it chooses, and back to the upside if it chooses to do so. Something to keep an eye on. The weekly looks decent in that we've got what I like to call a thinking doji. It's just taking a break before a potential measured move higher. And we'd be looking, see if it, let's see something on this candle. Boy, that really is smack in the middle, isn't it? Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it could easily take this out, right, on the weekly, or take out these highs from the previous week. It's got enough range to do that. So I like it, especially longer term, because there's not a ton of range on this for a day trade. And assuming we blow through this inside candle and start to go back up, I do like that for a long. SWCH. Yeah, and for those of you that aren't catching it, don't worry about it if you feel like you're lost. That's what the purpose of the morning sessions is, to fine tune this and look at what we're going to trade for the day, what still looks good for the week. And the first uncoupling will really be next week. So going into this week, we're going to have everything being the same, right? Your daily, weekly, quarterly, and monthly. And then your first uncoupling will happen next week on the weekly levels. So just watch for that. We'll have more information next week. Things could go anyway this week. So tomorrow, when we see what pre-market looks like, what futures look like, we'll have more information. I'll give you some more guidance at 8:45 in the morning. If you don't have that link for Discord, go ahead and direct message me on Twitter at yogagen70, and I'll send you the Discord link if you want, the morning follow-up on what we're looking to trade. But switch, I do like the monthly. I like to look at the quarterly. The quarterly, we've got that 2 down, 2 up, looking like she wants to go 2 up back to the upside. And there's certainly some magnitude here. Up to 2080. And a switch report, SWCH. So end of February, that's certainly got some time to move. On the daily, we've got a 1-3, potential 2 rev strat. Assuming we open above here and push back up, you've got magnitude to 1652. That's not huge. Let's see, 1638. Beyond that, up to 1650. The range on this thing is tiny. It's like 32 cents, which isn't bad. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad trade. You just might have to pick up more shares, more options if that's something you're looking to trade. On the weekly, let's look what our magnitude is there. And just because you may not be somebody that swing trades for the week, but you can still look at the weekly to give you an idea where magnitude is going to go. So if you're somebody that day trades and closes your positions every day, you can still look to the weekly to show you where the daily may be likely to go. And on the weekly, we see it's inside We are though, we did close more towards the top of that range. So on the weekly, I like it over 1651. We'll see if she gets there, not the biggest range, but over 1651, then we can start looking left to 1666, up to 1688, 17, so on and so forth. And there is quite a bit of room back up to 20. I mean, obviously this thing was quite a bit higher. Oh geez, and even back in the day, higher yet. So up to 24. Let's see, Johnson & Johnson. I did look at that earlier on my other charts. What is J&J report? J&J is the end of this month. So right now it says the 26th. Obviously that chart is very, very strong. Got an outside 3 on the yearly, outside 3 on the quarterly. And as Rob always says, we like long green and red bars. I mean, certainly this looks like it wants to continue to move higher. Looking left, looks like the only issue we have here is exhaustion risk. And you do have really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days to the upside. I mean, these are more doji type candles, but they certainly didn't close lower than the previous close. So I would still consider that 5 days of upward movement. So I would just be careful, if you're looking to go long on this particular guy, I personally would like to see some kind of pullback just because it's had so many days straight up, but very strong chart. And with earnings coming up, there's a strong likelihood that it'll continue to the upside. Let's look really quick on the weekly. An inside week, inside and up. Yeah, it's at all-time highs. So yeah, very strong chart. The thing that you have here is exhaustion risk. But as you and I both know, exhaustion risk does not by any means make it so it can't go higher at all, especially in the way that this market has been. Position vaccine info. Yeah, you've got that too. And the vaccine info, I mean, when you have newsy stocks, it's crazy too, because there's the old saying, buy the rumor, sell the news. So sometimes these stocks will run up on the anticipation of that news. And once the news is out, they'll sell off. It's hard to tell. It's just like with earnings, you'll see stocks have great earnings and sell off. Why? Because maybe they had a really strong run into earnings. Then when the report comes out, it's like, and they're over it. So just be careful with the newsy stocks. Thank you for posting that link on the Discord server. Yeah, I am the con said the same thing I actually just said. So other questions? I know that's a ton of information between Rob's bid and stocks I went over and the questions you folks had, but don't worry about it. That's the purpose of the morning sessions, is to kind of go back through this list. I do have it here, and I'll be keeping an eye on some of these things, because I would love for us to be able to catch, even if you don't want to do overnight holds, if we see something that on the 12-month chart looks like it wants to keep going, you could just put that as a stock that you're going to day trade to the upside. You might not hold overnight, but I do, with the new year, want to be able to point out for those that do like to swing trade where some of the potentials are. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that, as well as telling you, here's what I think on the day trades for those of you that just aren't comfortable holding overnight. But if everybody's clear and there aren't any more questions, thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm so sorry about the beginning of the deal, but you guys are very patient. I do appreciate it. And I will see everyone tomorrow at 8:45 Eastern Standard, and we'll get down to the nitty-gritty of what we think is going to move for the day, as well as continue to keep an eye on some of these longer term plays. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good night.